Hello everyone, Melody here, mama of 4 in our blended family of 6. Welcome to Homeschool Happy Hour. Today's video is going to be about 5 things to keep in consideration when you're working with an accelerated learner. Before we get started, I'd like to thank you for clicking on this video today. Thank you for joining us. If you are a returning subscriber, I really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for sticking with me, subscribing. We took a break in December, so I know I was off grid for a little bit, but we're back. And if you are a new subscriber, please take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, check us out on Instagram at Homeschool Happy Hour, and drop a comment in the box below. Either way, I love having conversations with you guys. A little bit of housekeeping. We have a slow internet connection out where we're at, and so originally my intention was to put videos out every Thursday at 3 o'clock. Well, the internet has other ideas sometimes, and to be honest, my life has other ideas sometimes. We are a busy family of 7 actually, because we have an exchange student with us, and I don't always get my videos done on time, or I do get them done on time and then the internet won't cooperate, so I can't get them uploaded. And so one of my New Year, not resolutions, but just adjustments that I'm trying to make is to go with the flow a little bit more, not stress when things don't get done. So I do intend to get out 1 video a week, but sometimes I might get 2 videos out a month. I hope you stick with us because we have some awesome curriculum reviews coming up in the spring and some previews of next year's curriculum as well. If you are interested in homeschooling, I've been homeschooling for 8 years, so this is a great place to get at least one mom's perspective on homeschooling. Anyway, today's video, accelerated learners. I would like to talk about 5 things that you want to consider if you have an accelerated learner in your homeschool, or even in your home. If you're accelerated learners in the public school, these things apply too in a lot of ways. Before we jump into those 5 things, let me tell you a little background about my kiddos and where they're at and where we're headed. So my oldest homeschooler, we have 2 older kiddos in public school, but my oldest homeschooler is turning 12 this month. She will be starting 9th grade in the fall. Our youngest child, she will be turning 10 this month, and she will be starting 6th grade in the fall. And so they're both working at their own pace, doing what they need to do, but both girls have always been a grade or 2 above, depending on what subject we're working on. And homeschool allows us to provide what they need academically at the levels they're at without worrying too much about age and grade. But there are still some challenges with this. Number 1, they're ready when they're ready. This applies to all children. We hear about this a lot when we're talking about children that maybe aren't doing what's expected of them at a certain age. If you have a 9-year-old that is not reading yet, people will often tell you, well, they're ready when they're ready. Don't worry about it. Don't push them. Just provide opportunity. The same thing goes when you have an accelerated learner, although we don't talk about it as often. So for the prisoner, my 12-year-old, and if you are like, the prisoner, what? Then check out some of our other videos and I'll talk to you about why we call her the prisoner. It's by choice, I promise. When she was 3, she started to read. And a lot of people gave us grief about that. They felt like she was learning to read too soon. When Bean was 4 or 5 years old, she was doing 3rd grade level math by choice. This is just where they were at. They were ready for it. And so because they showed signs of readiness, I provided them the opportunity. It's not about pushing them or trying to force them to go farther. It's about providing the opportunities and the materials when their individual brain is primed for that information. And so what often happens is if you follow your child's lead and you provide them what they're looking for when they're ready for it, they blossom and they grab onto it and they run with it. Now, if you have a child who loves to play the piano or has a musical talent, but you said, no, you can't have a piano because you're not old enough, then they don't have the opportunity to learn those skills and develop those skills. Same thing with art, same thing with a child that might have a deep love for nature or computers or anything along those lines. In our case, it was just more about academics. Some people have a hard time understanding that, but I think it's exact same thing as kids of all academic, emotional, social abilities, is you have to work with them as an individual. If you're following your child's lead, there really is no such thing as too early or necessarily as too late, within some parameters. Consideration number 2, when academics comes easily to a child, they might not get an opportunity to challenge themselves, which sometimes can result in a lack of grit academically. So if you have a child who has never had to work for the answers in math or work to understand reading and it has come easily to them, at some point, if you continue to accelerate their learning, they're going to probably hit a wall where now it's hard. And if you're telling your child, oh, you're so smart, they're so smart, and you're really emphasizing how smart they are, then what can happen, and what I've seen happen, is that they'll think, oh, well, I've hit this wall because I'm not smart enough to go to that next step. What we need to do is make sure that no matter where our children are at, we are focusing on their effort, not necessarily the success in meeting each academic challenge. And so if I have a child, let's say, like Bean, for example, if she's 4 or 5 years old and she's working multiplication in her head without thinking about it, instead of, wow, you're so smart, what a great job you've done, I can say, that's really cool that you did that. Now let's try this. Try something a little harder until you get to a point where they're feeling a little bit challenged. That challenge is important. It's important so that they can learn to push through the difficulty and so that they can know that learning is about working for it at a certain point. If you stop learning as soon as things get difficult, you will rob yourself of so much knowledge in the world. And so I think from a young age, you really need to make sure there's still that little bit of challenge. Now, I'm not talking about stressing them out and pushing them to do things that they hate and then making it not fun anymore. That is not what I'm saying at all. Keep it fun, keep it light, but celebrate the efforts. So if you have your child who is really good at multiplication in your head and then you hand them exponents, which is just building on that concept of multiplication, maybe they're not quite ready for that, but that's good. They have something to work for, something to reach for. If they're pushing against it and it's upsetting and causing conflict, absolutely back off a little bit, but still work for those things and reach for those things and celebrate their efforts. Don't rob your child of the opportunity to develop that just because they happen to be academically gifted. Number 3 is remember that they are still kids. At the end of the day, they're still children. If you have a child that has an extensive vocabulary at a young age and they can communicate more effectively than their same age peers, sometimes that we start to look at them as being older than they are, and they're not. Remember, emotionally, socially, they're often still very young and they need that patience and that kindness just like you would with any other child. Also remember that socially, if you have a child that is academically ahead of other children, sometimes that can cause conflict with their same age peers. Both my children they're tall. They typically, their friends are a year or 2 older than them, and they mesh really well with them because they're kind of in the same mindset. They're in the same academic level, the same understanding of things, and so they don't feel like they're playing with younger kids, because it can become frustrating if you have a child who has this understanding at this level and then some other kids, they're not at that same understanding, and it can cause conflict. Of course, it's important that we teach our children that we need to be able to work with and play with other people of all ages and all abilities, But if we're honest with ourselves, when we make friends as adults, we tend to choose friends and companions that are on the same wavelength as us. And so kids are the same way. Like I said, I've been fortunate. My kids are taller, so most people don't realize they're a year or two younger than the peers that they hang out with, and so it works out really well. But if your child is physically smaller, it can make it challenging to make friends. If the other kids see them physically as smaller, they might not be as inclined to include them, particularly if we're talking about having to mix with kids that go to the public school, where there's this division of the third graders don't play with the fourth graders. And I think you know what I'm talking about if you ever went to public school. If you have a homeschool community surrounding you, this is not usually a problem, because homeschool communities are really about making friends and connections of all ages. Remember, socially, you might need to make adjustments for your kids to make successful friendships. And emotionally, you need to remember, while they might have a cognitive understanding of something, emotionally, they might not be there yet. So they might need some extra help in that department. Challenge number 4, or consideration number 4, is meeting the academic needs of an accelerated learner can be tricky. Now, when you're homeschooling a younger child, it's not really that hard. If you're having a first grade age child and they're ready for third grade work, that's the beauty of homeschool. You can just do third grade work, no big deal. But when you start to hit the junior high, high school ages, that's where it gets tricky, especially if they want to be involved with their public school peers. Finding resources in our state can be tricky with that age gap. So, for example, the prisoner, like I said, will be starting 9th grade next year. Our public school system will not accept her homeschool credits. That's not by state, that's just our local public school. And our state says they have the right to or not to accept said credits. So if at some point she said, well, I want to go to public school and experience that, while I would like that to be a potential option for her, the public schools are not really supportive of that, in the sense that they'll let her go in, but if she at home at the age of 14, let's say she starts her freshman year at 12, 13 she's a sophomore, 14 she's a junior, most 14-year-olds are starting their freshman year, so they'll let her in as a freshman. So they won't accept any of her work and she'll have to start back. The local colleges can be challenging because they don't let them start we have what's called Running Start in our area, so they can go to college for free for the first 2 years. Well, they can't do that till they're 16. So that's normally offered to the juniors at school. So when she's a junior at 14, if she wanted to go and participate in that program, at surface value, she can't. Now, there's certain things that we can certainly do, and I am knee-deep in research on trying to figure out all of our options, because I'm all about having options so that she can choose what she wants to do, with having as many choices as possible so that we can cater to what her individual needs are. It's a challenge. If at the age of 12 she wanted to go to the public high school, I would not want her to go, because I've been to the public high school and it's full of some really good kids. It's also full of some things that I don't want her to be exposed to at that age. Fact. However, later, when she was, say, 14, like the example I used earlier, and a junior, well, there's a whole bunch of other kids in that school that are also 14. I don't think it matters whether or not she's a junior or freshman. We have a small school and they all mix together. But getting help from the public school, which is normally available to homeschoolers, can be more challenging when you're talking about a different grade level, because they're going to want to go by your child's age and not where they're at academically. The last thing to consider, and it's something that I had never thought of until I actually dealt with, is dealing with criticism and judgment from other parents, from teachers, all that kind of stuff. When she was very young, she was my oldest biological child, so that was pre-blended family. She would start doing new things, and just like any brand new mom, I was really excited about those things and I wanted to share them with my friends about, oh, she did this, that, or the other thing that I just wanted to celebrate and talk about like any other parent. Well, I started to realize that when I was celebrating those things that she had done, like, oh, she started reading, or she wrote her name for the first time, or did these exciting things that normally parents put up on the wall and tell their friends about. Other people didn't want to accept that information from me because of her age. I don't know if it's because they thought it was a judgment or a comparison with their children, which it absolutely was not, but for some reason, people get resistant to that sometimes, and then they push back with, well, you're pushing her too hard, you're doing too much, you're going to cause damage, and all these crazy things. And I promise you, my child's not damaged because I let her read books when she wanted to read books. That's just not a thing. I think no matter where our children are at, it's important that we're able to celebrate them, to celebrate their efforts, to let our children see that we celebrate them. And so sometimes when you have an accelerated learner, it can be socially awkward to celebrate them because I think other people try and they get this, I don't know if it's subconscious or conscious or what, but they start doing this comparison game in their head when that is not what it's about at all. It's just about celebrating your kid. If you have an accelerated learner at home, I'd love to hear about the things that have worked for you and your child. And if you have an accelerated learner that has started high school at a younger age, please drop a comment in the box below because like I said, I am knee-deep figuring that out and it is kind of stressful, to be honest. But we'll figure it out, we'll get through it. I'm really excited about next year. We're stepping more into child-directed learning because she is so into learning new things and she has demonstrated that she's really capable of taking a leading role in her own education. We're working with that. We're going more in that direction. So stick around. Check out some of our later videos when we talk about what that looks like in our home. Drop a comment, tell me about what do you do with your accelerated learner, and make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and I will catch you next time.